Hello and welcome to Not Compliant Enough. I'm your podcast host, Karista, and today we have an extremely special guest. We have Sarah Baiada, who has 20 years of experience as a wellness industry practitioner, assisting clients through big transitions in their lives. She runs events and courses such as Spring Clean and Illuminate to assist people's focus back into natural law and presence. She's the founder of Rosa Temple, a holistic frequency product line. Sarah has a new body of work called Rosa Mystica, focusing on unweaving colonization from feminine stories. And Sarah is a personal mentor and friend to me, and I'm so excited to have you on. Thank you for being here, Sarah.
Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. And let's just dive on in. So in talking about like women and unweaving the feminine stories, I actually did an episode last week on that. And so I'm really curious to know, like, what is your take about the feminine stories and this sort of mindset that people have around females in general?
Well, it goes back very, very far, so far that we've forgotten anything else. And this is the problem. Our whole civilization is shaped by storytelling, through myth, through legend, even through science itself, religion. Everything is passing on an idea. Everything is passing on an ideology. And if you have the power or in a position to change or shape the narrative, as we've all seen, if you can literally write out whole generations, whole civilizations, whole genders, whole experiences of life out of the story that we continue to tell ourselves of who we are as human beings. So religion has definitely been a big part in governance. I don't see much difference between the two. Has played a big part in rewriting the story of females throughout time. So much, in fact, that females don't actually know what a female is, especially when people have to migrate from their traditions, from their culture, and they actually lose the principles and the very foundations of what it means to be a female in their lineage. So we're very much so far down the line and so far removed from the feminine story that now we have things popping up like rewilding females and all this thing to try and ignite that feminine power again, not in the way that New Age is telling us what like feminine energy is, not in the way that any religion is telling us, but especially New Age. A lot of that is hijacked bullshit that, sorry, am I allowed to swear?
Absolutely. You can swear away. There is no bounds here. Go for gold.
That's fine. I feel very comfortable here. So yeah, a lot of the New Age is constructed narrative to still keep women in cages, so to speak, giving them a little bit of truth and then filtrating it through so many different ways that females can be used in society. So it's still not feminine mastery. It's still not feminine empowerment. It's all catchphrases and memes to make us just slaves to a system still. Absolutely.
And you make such excellent points there. Like, in terms of, writing out of history, like I read this incredible book called The Burning of Books. And, that is actually something that people have done throughout history, is like to write people out of history is to burn books, because that is how history is recorded. So you only know what you do by what is recorded. And so much of that has been lost. And I know that you do a lot of work with wisdom keepers and things like that to, keep a lot of this knowledge going. In your experience, how have you seen how this sort of knowledge comes through, like, and the work that you're doing, particularly with around this, like, empowering females and not doing it through memes and catchphrases? Like, what does that look like?
Well, for me personally, I've spent a lot of time putting myself through many different experiences, so to speak, cracking myself open, but confronting things head on. I have a very, very rebellious spirit, and I apply that to everything. I question everything, and so I've always seeked out mentors. I've always seeked out mastery. It's kind of just wired into my system. So that has taken me from a very young age, traveling the world, working with different cultures, working with different masters, self-mastery, to all through India, or like through South America, through America, through Europe itself, through my own ancestry. I've gone on a very deep journey to find out what was actually true, because everything felt like it was, yeah, it seems true, but it also seems a bit off. And it was always that, because I'm a very strong Virgo and perfectionist, I apply it to that. Like, if it feels just a tad off, there's something I've been hearing a lot in my head recently, which is the devil's in the details. And what I'm taking that as at this present moment is it's the rewriting of stories, of legislation, of law, LAW. It's all the little intricate little contracts that are in between the bigger contracts. See, we all have specific contracts with this planet, with the earth, with ourselves, and also with our lineage. And we get sidetracked and we get steered off our big path, but we get thrown here and there by the little contracts that are put on top of our contracts, which we verbally agree to or we don't verbally agree to, and we're born into. And it's a process, a lifetime process of unweaving these underlying contracts, patterns that we're calling them now. There's no difference. It's a rewiring of a cyclic pattern through the body that we are filtrated through to appear and react in a certain way. Therefore, not having sovereignty over our souls, sovereignty of our bodies in this system. And so working with wisdom keepers from around the world, I've been put in front of really strong mirrors over and over and over and over again. And for many, many, many years, I couldn't find women, elders, mentors. They weren't there. And surprisingly enough, they were in Australia, but I hadn't met them yet. And I just kept finding all these men. And I was like, men aren't meant to be teaching women this stuff, because we have different systems and we actually learn in very different ways. So I have like a form of dyslexia, which made me really not the best at writing essays and everything. However, I could listen to someone tell a story and I could understand and comprehend everything that they were saying, but then to translate it into this written word, just wouldn't work. And so I had to go through many different ways of learning how to write, read, all that kind of stuff. And so from a very young age, it was very obvious, like, I'm a bit weird, a bit different. I learned differently. And the schooling system didn't work with that at all. So I was always having to go and seek this other way. And because our structures are set up purely by men, by a male way of interpreting the world, it's like, where are women supposed to fit in this? And why are women so pushed out of this experience? When I went to India, I was at an ashram and I was there for a long time, and they're my family through and through. Like, I've been with them many times. I knew them, I know them. And I was in my early 20s, and I was very And I was a bit of an arrogant shit at that point in my life. I thought I knew everything. I'd studied a lot of science. I was very sure of how things were. And then one of the masters was like women are supposed to stay in the house and men are supposed to go out. And I was fucking furious. And I was so furious at him. And I was like, that is bullshit, blah, blah. But then as I started to actually humble myself in any capacity, I was able to actually sit and observe how the ashram worked and I consciously asked, like, I know what I need this explained to me. How does this work? And then I spent 6 months going through India, like sitting on trains in the middle of the night, where is the only times that I was seeing the mothers of the families and seeing the woman sit on the bed and give the orders, and everyone was in, like, knew what they had to do. She was in complete control of the family. And I was like, oh, okay, there's a whole nother world that I have not even realized exists. And it's the home. And because society wasn't valuing that in any capacity, I was like, well, women aren't valued then. Women are just subservient. But then when I actually got to see that in full power, like, shit, like, women can and are essentially running the world. They actually just don't know that they are. And that is how these other different programs are coming in, because women are told, well, it's not, well, it's becoming more popular now, but like women, at home aren't really, they have to be out in the workforce and all this kind of stuff. If women can apply and remember that their power actually lies in holding the space for things to flourish, aka a home, they can actually do that in a workspace. But there's a very big break between those two things existing. It's like they can't exist together, and we're all striving for this balance, which is complete bullshit. You can't actually get balance. It's actually all supposed to be in flow. These are all how these stories are rewritten to trick us into believing that we need to be something else, that we need to strive for this, when it's actually no, it's women run in a completely different format. Women's skills, sit and watch a man work and sit and watch a woman work. Women can multitask, not against men, but like women can have 20 different things running at once, like a computer with too many tabs open. Whereas men can actually focus on one thing and follow it through to the end, and then they move on to the next thing. Not to generalize, but like if you actually sit and watch, men get an order and they go with it. Women actually hold the entire space. And if you don't have someone, or if you don't have that space held, the ideas cannot actually flourish. Probably gone way off topic.
No, that's like, it's actually great, because there's so many things to pick up on there, because as you say, like, we live in these cycles, but I think what you're getting at there as well is that we're so disconnected from those cycles. We're disconnected from how that works. And yeah, women are very, they feel things a lot more. As a generalization, they feel things a lot more, whereas men are very much in that logical kind of side of things. And I mean, I don't subscribe to this right brain, left brain thing, because that is nonsense as well. But yeah, like, you're absolutely right. And I think you've touched on an incredible point there, because the space is not held. And this is such a big thing with workplaces, is that the space is not held for people to be themselves, and to learn in ways that work for them, but also to work in ways that work for them. And so through your experience, I'd be curious to know, like, if the workplace and the schooling system wasn't the way that it's set up now at all, and it was like, we layered it all and we started from scratch, what would that look like?
Well, you'd be taking notes you would be modeling it off what cultures have done for literally generations before now, because you have to model everything off natural law. You have to have it flow in natural law. Otherwise, it can't exist. It will fall. That's why empires fall, because there is nothing structurally sound to hold it in place. or like basically the earth doesn't want it, so it gets rid of it. But when you're looking at natural law, it's observation, it's witness, it's a completely different way of experiencing the world, and it's choice. We're told that we have to follow these specific ideologies, these ways of being. We have to rope learn. We have to be able to throw that out, and to give a correct answer, then we get our little treat or our little sticker, and then we can move on to the next level. It's like a video game. Actual living as an actual human being, we are cyclic. We are our environment. We are nature. There is literally no separation, and we have to go through cycles. If you stay in one spot for your entire life and you don't do anything, so life, I would never wish that upon anyone, but you're not evolving. There's no self-evolution. When you are in, I don't want to say the word alignment because that's kind of been taken over, but when you feel your feet on the earth, with the earth on your feet, there's no separation. You know what you're supposed to be doing. You actually, like, I knew what I was supposed to do with my life when I was 4. I was like, okay, well, that's done. And then I spent my entire life with everyone questioning, well, what am I meant to be doing? What am I meant to be doing? I'm like, how do you not know yet? Like, you just have to put your feet back on the ground. You have to come back, then you actually know. But it's the way that a schooling system, a learning experience should be. It should be navigated by the human, the actual child, because the child is, I know this is a bit weird, but I view children as elders. And because the next generation to come through, they're coming on in a different frequency, and they're coming through you, who has experienced so much. So they're your elder. They can actually take the baton and go forward. Whereas we're told to look at children as, don't speak, don't, like, just sit in the corner, keep yourself occupied. But if you actually just watch a child without interfering, they go and create their personality, their soul shines and does whatever that soul, what that relationship wants to have with the earth, because that's the most important thing, not what career you're going to have and all this other stuff. The main objective is to nourish their relationship with earth. And if their soul's journey is to go into corporate and to go into these very full-on experiences of essentially disconnection, they have very, very strong grounding, and they take that nature with them because that's how their whole programming was built on. If you just look at, like, we moved out of the city up into around Byron just before my son started school, so that he never took his shoes off to go outside. Like, he always had shoes on when he went outside. I was like, this is fucked. This is not right. And so now it's hard to get his shoes on. I was like, okay, well, that's a very distinctive difference between how children can actually be in different systems. But I very well know that he is supposed to be in systems in his life, but his home is nature. His home and his function, the way that his system is built, is off nature. And for schooling systems to work like that, they have to get them out of the classroom. They have to take the authority out from the front of the room and put the authority in a circle with children. And they have to acknowledge that child is in its authority. And that's where the subservience comes in, the slavery mentality comes in, because children are taught out of their authority. And so when a child is in their authority, they know who they are, and they do not spend their entire life searching for who they are. And then they just get on with it. And whether that's just to experience the smell of honey from a bee farm, or to go work in a tech company and create light into matter for modeled off their pattern, which is nature, it's a very different experience to what we have now, which is egoic people modeling their creations from their systems that are just trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you touched on some excellent points there, particularly around like kids being the elders and teaching us more. And I think we're seeing that, like there's so much rhetoric around there about Gen Z and how they're, you know, no one wants to work and all this sort of thing. But the interesting thing is, like, they have grown up witnessing their parents go through, you know, these hierarchical systems that don't allow them to be themselves. And they end up very old, unwell, very jaded, really pissed off with the world. Like, I don't know if it's just a men getting older thing, but they seem to get real cranky as they get older. But, you know, like younger kids are our teachers, and you see them when, as you mentioned, like when they're playing, you see them playing with Lego and stuff, and they treat it like work, like that there's literally, you know, there's nothing else going on, and they're so engrossed in that. And like you can literally see like the integration between kind of play and what, you know, we would consider work as such. Like it's such this, work is such a weird connotation in these systems. And so like, I guess what I'm trying to get at next is like, I know the way that you work is very kind of, you know, getting people back into their own body, getting them back into their own systems, like understanding their energy and all of those sorts of things. And so for people who are curious, but probably have not like looked at any of this sort of stuff, because it is, you know, so much of it's considered like woo woo, for want of better words, and all the rest of it. And there's not a lot of space held or integration into these sorts of things. So if someone is curious and wanting to, you know, understand how they can get back within their own body and embody some of that in their own system, like what would be the things that you would recommend for them to do?
Well, it's rewiring their entire systems back into nature. Now, what does that look like? A lot of the time, so the way that I work, basically, I'll be very real and very honest.
Absolutely.
So I worked in Sydney for a long time, so I was in the middle of it. North Sydney, everywhere. Bondi, everywhere. And I was coming down once a month for a long time. Every single human that came through my door, as soon as I walked into my field, as soon as I walked into my mirror, into my space, they burst out crying. People that have never met me before, people are there that had just been sent to me as a referral. Oh, you have to see Sarah.
Actually,
don't understand why, but you just have to go.
I'm pretty sure that was me. Yep. I came to you as a referral, and I'm more than certain that the first time I walked in to see you, I just burst out into tears. Yeah.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
So always have tissues there. Or let them flow, it doesn't matter. And when I get down to, like, and I would ponder, like, why is this always happening? Like, this is kind of comedic in that it happens every time. Like, why are people crying as soon as they see me? So because I would actually look at them, because they would sit in the chair across from me. There was no hierarchy. There was nothing else but two souls seeing each other. And nearly no one looks at them like that anymore, because they're just stuck in a system that has dehumanize them, and they're looking to be seen. And majority of the people that start to crack out, that moment hits them very hard, of like, no one has seen me for such a long time. And then that's when the unraveling starts. That's where the support is needed, because that walk doesn't actually have to be alone. And that's why we have practitioners and support in there that are hopefully ethically trained to support the process. But it starts this unraveling process of unweaving anything that has compromised their humanity. And then they come back to themselves. And then within the session, I always joke that, like, you're going to feel like you've smoked a big joint after this, or sometimes even like you've had mushrooms, because the human body and the soul are supposed to feel free. And the work that I do is just listening. I'm just listening, and I have the tools to help assist the body to open up on its terms. And I never push the body further than what it is asking, because it is a process. It is a journey, and it can feel like a fucking long journey, but it all starts with someone who can see to actually see you. That's what, at the end of the day.
Yeah, that is so true. And like, you make such a good point. I mean, not all support is created equal, and not all listening is created equal as well. Like, there's so much of this, oh, you need to listen to people and then repeat to them what they've said and like pretend like you've actually heard them.
Infuriating.
It's so infuriating, right? And you can tell when people are doing it, like, it's such nonsense. You're like, I know you're just parroting back to me what you're telling me right now. Like, actually fucking listen. Like, Can you do that, or is it too hard?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like with that, how can people attune into listening better, like into actually listening?
Well, I like to throw my hat over the fence and jump the fence and find everything. You need a practitioner that has a shit ton of range, has actually had many different experiences, and not necessarily had to experience them firsthand, but it definitely helps. But listened when they've been in the presence of someone who has experienced something. I'm very empathic, so I can experience the pattern, and I can wear the pattern, I can release the pattern. What that means, when you break that down to it, is a lot of people, when they're in a practitioner perspective, when I was studying nutrition, one of our teachers was very real, and she straight out said, she walked into the room and said, every single, like, raise your hand in a nutritional medicine class, raise your hand who's had an eating disorder. Everyone raised their hand. And I was like, oh shit, we're studying this because we're studying ourselves. And it was like, okay, well, that puts into perspective a little bit. And then she said, before you work with people, you have to understand what your motives are for working with someone. If you're going in to save someone, see what happens. If you're going in with an intention to assist someone's own journey, it's a very different experience. So I feel like that I always say that when I'm running classes and courses and whatnot, because you have to comprehend what your motive is. If you're of service because you feel it from your core, that's a very different experience of needing following the, high-ranking doctor situation where it's a class system.
Look, yeah, it's like external validation, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so you constantly have to check yourself. And as a practitioner, you have to, we're told to leave ourselves out of the situation and not talk about and not be a part of someone's journey, in that, you know, there's a separation. But I don't feel like that's 100% true. I've had many, like I work with a lot of women who have had miscarriages, have had stillbirths, have had really traumatic experiences that are always swept under the rug, and you just get handed a pamphlet after that's happened.
Or a teddy bear. Mm-hmm.
Or a teddy bear. Wow, that's humiliating. For them, not for the person. And I am very qualified to work with people in that situation because I've experienced it. And I look back to me trying to work with people like that before any of that happened. And I was like, I hear you. And it's like, no, you can't understand the depth of grief that can actually, that brings out of a person. But then that grief is like opening this huge space for love to exist. It's a very, very incredible experience, but it's shit to get there. So when women and men sit in front of me and they've experienced these things, or their partner's experiencing it and they need support, because they definitely need support in those situations as well, I definitely feel those feelings, but I've also seen the other side of those feelings, so I can actually hold all of it, and I can hold the feeling of that full unconditional love that comes from that very big experience. And I feel that that's why, like, for example, I've never worked in corporate, and I'm very grateful for this point. Later on, definitely. But for now, I've had the privilege of working one-on-one and in groups in a situation where I don't have to succumb to any other idea or ideology. So I don't know the extent of what that feels like at an older age to be in that situation. I have reference points of being in school and feeling that authority, but I don't have that reference point at this age, having to experience that. However, I do work with a lot of people who are in those situations, and so I see the aftermath, and I help with the cleanup of the burnout, and my instinct is to always help them to get out of the situation. But that's a very long journey.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you touch on some incredible things there, because like when you go through those big moments in your life, like a miscarriage or a stillbirth and things like that, like you're just not the same person that you were afterwards. It's like anything that, you know, is a huge thing that happens in your life, you're just not the same person. And the aftermath of that is incredible. And so I'm really curious to know, like, with the aftermath of the cleanup of people, you know, in these corporate environments and having these experiences, like, what have you noticed? Like, what are the biggest observations that you've made during the time that you've worked with these sorts of people?
Well, I've done a lot of work one-on-one, but the biggest ones that I've seen of how I've learned how to work with it was actually when I would be going to other mentoring events and whatnot, and seeing them preach from the front of the room, you got to leave your job, all this stuff, and then actually see what happens to those people when they leave, but they do not have anything set up. It's very all well and good to go, you got to get yourself out of that situation, but the individual's mentality, sorry to say, is so fucking broken.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That they're having to actually go through post-traumatic stress symptoms that need to be addressed. And then there's a massive rebuilding process after that to purely trust themselves. to trust that they've got it, to trust that they can actually support themselves, and to trust their own idea. Because when you take a step back and you actually look at how corporations, they're not just there, they've built up to a thing, and it's because a certain group of people like a certain idea or vote on a certain idea, and that becomes the head of an empire. And then they need people to buy into that idea, to support that specific idea for it to flourish. And they're flourishing from the energy of their workers. And society is already conditioned to believe a few set rules, as in, if you have like a huge one is actually that programs people is you're going to get this certain amount of money each week or each fortnight or each month. That cuts off anyone, like people's ability to think outside of how much they're worth, that someone else is telling them that's how much they're worth, and then they can divide for their needs from that amount, when we're actually infinite beings that can actually create and destroy for eternity. So we're automatically going into a little box, and that is a condition that primes people to be able to fit into these ideas and ideologies. They can't stretch out, and to stretch out of that, majority of the time, they either have to work their butts off and I heard recently someone said to me, it's all about compromise. And I said, no, it's not. Every single step up that ladder is compromising a part of themselves in some way or another, whether it be on a soul level, an integrity level, whether it be like sacrificing their family level, or their general just spark for life. A lot of the time it's spark for life. And they can't leave this space. That primes people to be in the perfect corporate setting and public service domain, because I don't see any difference between the two at this point. Everyone who and I work with a lot of people from all sectors, that it all comes back to the same mentality, and you can see the mentality, the wiring and the program, because as soon as you get them to talk about their work and then the idea of leaving it, oh, well, I can't do that. And it's a really specific tone. I can't leave because I've got to do this and I've got to do that and blah, blah, blah. And it's this like, I can't, I'm stuck here. And it's, as with my job, and it's people's role just to say, hey, you can actually open that door and walk the fuck out, because that door doesn't actually exist to begin with. You've been conditioned that there's a door and there's no actual door. So it's examples like that have confined us to be perfect candidates to give of ourselves to get a reward for a specific idea. But what we're completely forgetting is every single person has an idea that comes from within. That's why we try to do so much work to go within, because we've got our set of instructions inside of us. We've got our everything inside of us. And we're not meant to have empires like this. We're meant to like open up from within to here and have this world mirror back to us. The model is completely fucked, and we are primed into it without questioning, because that's what we've been told society is.
Absolutely. And like from such a young age, like this goes back to what you were saying before about schooling. Like it's the same thing, it's that potential that we don't see for ourselves because we've been told that we don't have it.
Yeah.
And that's reinforced. And as you say, like going to these jobs and being like, this is how much you're worth. And then in order to get to the next scale, you've got to sacrifice more of yourself in order to get there. Otherwise, go somewhere else.
Yeah. And so when you work with people that are coming out of that, it's not as simple as saying, just leave your job. It's like, how am I going to support the entire world I've created for this, because whatever is happening in front of me, I've mirrored throughout my entire existence as well. So it's a total self deconstruction of those patternings, of those ways of assuming the world is, of letting go of essentially external authority and putting all of that effort and energy and love back into that internal authority. And that is a massive, massive process. And a lot of it comes down to money. A lot of it comes down to society, social structure, self-identity. It's why they always say, like, you got to burn your identity, all this kind of stuff. But people don't actually understand what that means. It means like it's the self-identity. If I lose the idea of what I've been told I am, like, what am I? Well, actually, if your eyes are always like this, you just take your eyes and go in. All you have to do is take some breaths. I know it sounds simple, but it actually is. This is a massive program, by the way. Everything that you need to get back to yourself is really simple, but we've been told that everything has to be hard and really, like, you have to work for it. But to fall back into yourself, the work is deconstructing those ideas. To fall back into yourself is actually really easy. So, yeah.
And do you think that, like, because we've been taught that this needs to be hard and things like that, do you think part of that is because, like, essentially people have made a lot of money out of telling people that it's got to be hard and that they've got the fucking answers to everything? Like, come with me and I'll show you how to do this.
Yes.
Like, yeah, can you talk to more about that sort of
that is a big
perspective
big
of it?
part of it. But then the other part of it is, if people realize this, then they won't be enslaved to the system and keep the system going anymore. Because you've got to remember that you are basically a big ball of light, right? And I hate the word woo-woo so much, but
sorry, I used it before, but yeah, I hate it too.
I hate it so much. Like, weird and wonderful is something I say, but that's also stupid, because like, I'm talking about the real world. I'm talking about real life. I'm talking about living. All this other stuff is talked into existence. It's said into existence. It's spelled into existence. That is not real. It only exists because we are creative beings. And what that means is that we have the capacity to generate energy, to create life, literally, and to create matter from within and produce it into this world. But we are convinced out of remembering and knowing that we actually don't need anything. Like, when I was in Peru, I was walking out of where I was staying, and like, this huge banana tree fell right in front of my path, and it was just full of bananas. And I was just like, what the like, it was significant to me at that moment, because like, the words that I heard, like, I had heard a whisper inside of me, like in my head, not the mind going blah 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 blah, but like this. And I always position it like it came from back here, whereas when it's rope learned and like from this arena, it's like from here. I like to make it as physical as possible and practical as possible, because it is a very practical system. It's not woo-woo, like, it's actually a really practical system. But I heard this voice just be like, abundance literally falls from the sky. Like, why are you making it so hard? I was like, oh fuck, everything I need is right in front of me. I was like, okay, like, thanks. Like, and like, at that point I had no money in my bank. I was on the other side of the world. Like, my son and my partner were back over here. I was the primary. It was a very weird situation. When I say I throw myself into situations, I really throw myself into situations, and I learned the hard way. But it hits me very, very hard. But as soon as I kind of remembered that, this like release, or this unwiring of this pattern of like, I come from working class parents, And then like farmers before that, you have to work for every single thing that you make and earn and come into your life. You have to work for it. It has to be hard. It has to be, you know, you have to put everything into it. And then to have food just fall into my lap, I was like, whoa, okay, hang on. This is a bit, this is a jarring experience because I've been told that it has to be hard, but it's actually easy. And I was like, okay, thanks. I got the message. Yeah. Okay, cool. And then that was enough to feed like 30 people. And like, it was incredible. Like, yeah, it was amazing.
And like, that's so incredible, right? Because you talk about that in the way of abundance, but I almost feel like that could be replicated across support as well, because, you know, when people have been programmed in this way, they don't actually know how to receive support.
Mm-hmm.
And you must find that a lot in the work that you do. Like, so how do you kind of break through that programming of like, you know, I'm fine, I can work hard, I can do it myself, like I don't need anyone, like, you know, all that sort of thing. And like, I will put my hand up and be like, I was that client for you. So at least one of them.
This is majority of clients, by the way.
Yeah. But
and you straight out just have to start. You have to look at their relationship with their mum and dad.
Yeah.
It always comes back to their relationship with their mum and dad, because mum and dad or primary carers are there to provide for you until you can provide for yourself. If that comes with condition, then you've learnt that help and support comes with condition, therefore there's an ulterior motive, therefore I'm not safe. This comes down to a lot of the time mothers who are they coming from a place and a space of unconditional love, or is it conditional love? This is where I look, because if it's coming from a place of unconditional love, because a mother role model is modeling the relationship with their mother underneath their feet, Earth Mother Earth, the Earth's ability to support the experience of life. And if the mother has been put in situations themselves, because it doesn't come from just nowhere, if they have been operating from a place of unconditional love, then the person, the child, doesn't question even what is support. Like, why do you have to question it? It's just there. Compared to conditional love, that, well, if you don't come to me here, then you won't get food. If you don't act on your best behavior at dinner with the big family, then you're not going to get the prize at the end. If you do this, then you won't get punished. And yes, there's definitely ways to discipline and to have boundaries with kids, because they do need to comprehend that there's boundaries between people and boundaries, like, but what I notice is the kids coming through now have quite a strong sense of self and quite strong boundaries with themselves, because their parents are usually from parents that have had conditional love, so they're trying something new, which will also have its pushback and all the other stuff. But it comes down to a mother figure, the person who's representing Earth. Have they provided you love unconditionally or conditionally?
And that's like so interesting, because you could almost replicate that into a corporate environment as well, like to any office situation. Because it's like that support is not unconditional for the most part. And like, as you said before, it's like, you've got to do this and then you get the prize. Or it's like, you've got to do this and then maybe you get a promotion, like, and that's your prize. Your prize is some more work.
And that's the space that has provided, that is the platform, the foundations that the man, the male, the idea, the cosmos, the cosmic, the vision is built upon. So if the feminine has been infiltrated, as in the way that people are nourished and nurtured as children, the way that people are supported by the feminine. If that is infiltrated, then the very, very foundation that all these ideas are built on, it essentially falls over time, because it's based on wearing people out until they've got no battery left, and then they die, and then they just find new people to come in and come in and come in, as we're seeing so often now, just firing whole bunches of people that can't comply or give that energy anymore, and so bring in the new ones. But a lot of the time, the strongest infiltration for a civilization, or for like from a strategy perspective, is you fuck with the foundations and you make it so it churns out specific needs for that idea to exist on. And that idea could be any corporate head. It's like Elon Musk, for example. He's an idea.
Great example at the moment. Yeah.
Jeff Bezos, he's an idea.
Yeah.
And they're telling you straight to your face, by the way, that they're harvesting everything that you have and spitting you out, because we're convinced to rely upon their idea to build their idea. So like we need it. But all they've done is model what we have on the inside, because that's why it looks like truth, but it's actually inverted and it's mirrored and it's a bit off.
Yeah. Well, it's like creativity is currency, right? So like you're the currency that's going in there with your creativity, and that's being harvested and used and, you know, touted as their own. And you're not able to take any kudos for the stuff that you've done because you're part of that company. So you're not allowed to even like extract your personal self from that to show what you've done, or promote that. Like, you know, even with these layoffs that are happening in the States, like I saw the other day on LinkedIn, there was like one graphic designer who'd been working for this massive company. I can't recall the name of it, but like it was years worth of a portfolio that she no longer had to be able to go get another job, like, because they've been locked out of it. So it's like all of that creative currency and soul that she'd put into all that work was just, you know, access denied, computer says no. And
that's why when you're working with people, and that's why when I'm working with people that are experiencing this, you're dealing with post-traumatic stress. You're dealing with shock first and foremost, post-traumatic stress that, depending on how long they've been in, depends on how long it's going to for the mending and the healing to take place. Because what I've learned with working with so many Indigenous people around the world is that healing takes time, but we're told that no, we need to use every minute, otherwise we're wasting it. No, healing actually takes time, and that's why it's not a favored experience, because we're programmed to believe that, well, I can just take this pill and it can make this stop. No, you're stopping your body's signal telling you that there's something wrong. That doesn't stop the thing that's happening wrong to you. You're being abused, you're being taken advantage of. It's a very harsh reality when people wake up out of it, and it's like they're waking up into their avatar, like into their body, and they're like, what the fuck just happened? And you're like, I know, but it's okay, and you're actually going to get through this, because you're stronger than anything that happened, and you clearly had to experience it to see what it was like. Now go and build what you're here to do. Because that's the reality. But you can't do it from a place of trauma.
No, absolutely. And I think trauma has become almost one of those abused words as well. Like it gets touted around like everything's traumatic now. And so, it's like being really conscious, and even post-traumatic stress, like, you know, it's not just reserved for the people that have been on the, you know, in war and things like that, as we've, you know, Vietnam War veterans and things that we've known about before. It's actually more complex than that. And, you know, complex post-traumatic stress is such a big, like, you know, it's really not been covered as much. Like, I think it's starting to come out there, but like parts of what you're talking about there are definitely more around that complex PTSD sort of thing, that it's so insidious that you don't even realize that it's happening until you do get out and go, oh, well, what was that? Like, where am I? Who am I? Like, what is this? It's, yeah.
And that, like, the amount of gaslighting and manipulation that happens in the workspace, and bickering, and like high school dramas and all that stuff, it's just, it's just proof of, like, they've stopped evolving themselves. They're stuck at 16, and they might be like that till they die. They're met with exactly the same problems that they were met with when they were 16, and they are not listening to all the information, to the entire world screaming at them, to their entire body screaming at them, with rashes, with UTIs, with chronic bowel syndromes, with everything. Every single thing is screaming, but they can't hear, because as soon as they turn up their hearing, they're going to hear the screams, and it is going to be so painful. And this is what stops people from actually taking the leap. But if it's done with grace, and it's done with humanity, with humility, if it's done with, like, acknowledging that that person has actually been through something crazy, and it might just be a corporate job, but no, that's fucking crazy. Because they're literally having to walk into those doors every single day, into a place that's so unnatural and so foreign to the way that their soul actually wants to be on this planet. That is so traumatic. And then they come out, and then they have to fill their life with ways to soften and dampen the pain, and to stop that screaming. And it's a really, like, I've been in situations, and like I have the privilege of being with people's souls and being with people's actual bodies when I'm one-on-one, and hearing the screams, and it's fucking deafening. And actually allowing their body, hey, they can't hear you. Let's try a different way. What are some ways that this person can actually hear? And it might be remembering something from childhood, from a place before they felt like they lost themselves. And that starts to ignite their spark softly. Hey, why don't we try and do something creative, and some way of working with our bodies that is a little bit more graceful than shock therapy, or, whatever shock experience. Mine that cracked me out was like Vipassana, which is 10 days of no speaking, and I'd never meditated before. Anyway.
Way to put yourself in it.
Yeah. But you have to you have to have grace with yourself. And another thing is, I always talk to the person as I'm talking to their soul. I'm not talking to their heads. I'm not talking to their egos, and I can bridge between the two to the physical words that they can hear, and there's an internal dialogue happening. And that's just because I've been listening for such a long period of time that muscle is exercised. So that's why, yes, people should definitely meditate and all this, but you don't have to meditate with music on. You don't have to meditate with something. If you can't sit with yourself without your phone, a book, without music on, without any noise for 5-10 minutes, just literally observe what your brain and what your mind is trying to show you, then you've got some work to do. You've got to start by just listening to yourself. And some really great ways, and like, I know that when you're in a corporate situation and you're in those offices, some really great tips that I give people is remember your nature. Even though you're in there, it's still created from a natural, it still has nature in it. It still has unaltered nature. And a really great thing that I get people to do is, when they're feeling a bit overwhelmed, go to the toilet, go to the bathroom, put your hands in water, run the tap. And yes, if you've never done anything like this before, you're going to think it's nuts, but it really works. So you put your hands in the water, you close your eyes if you can, or you just have your eyes open and you take 3 big breaths. And when you're doing that, you actually have the intention of, I am clearing my body. I am connecting with water, and I allow it to flow. And by having that little moment of, oh, get a bit of nature in there, it actually starts to clear the field a little bit, so you can like see through the cracks just a little bit. So your body has room to breathe even for a second. I tell everyone to do that, and it works well.
Absolutely. I can attest to that. It definitely works very well. But, I guess the one thing I am curious about, so like there's these systems that are kind of shit and we don't really want to be there, and they're making us, unwell, and, we're stressed, and we're like, just absolutely fucked, for want of better words. We still, like, our society set up with these corporate environments, and it is something that does obviously pay a lot better for a lot of people, rather than going to, some more creative pursuits, which is also part of this societal idea of like, oh, you can't be an artist or whatever because it doesn't pay the bills, so we do have these corporations that are essentially helping people live, and particularly at the moment around like the economic environment and the global environment and different things like that. So how do you see ways of being able to shift and change those corporations even slightly from inside? Because obviously we're not able to just dismantle everything immediately, and they are going to shift and change. We do see more aware corporations being built, and that is literally happening. But for those, I guess, old school places, if they were to finally wake up and be like, oh, we need to do something to help make these spaces a bit better than what they are, what are some ways and things that you have, like, from your experiences and from what you've seen, what are some ways that you think that they could do that in a better way?
Well, first and foremost, like, is the idea of the corporation or public body, is that of service to the planet or to humanity? If it's not, then why are you feeding it? This comes back to, it's all from within. And I know this is going to irritate you because it's not an Australian answer, but
no, it's fine. You answer however you want. Like, it was a very long-winded question. I don't really know where I was going, but like, yeah.
No, it's a very important question.
Yeah.
Like, what do we do? It's like, well, is it supposed to exist? And therefore, if you're having, as a human being, if you're having to compromise so much to fit into that world, is it serving humanity? What are the motives behind the value system of the company? What words are they using? What words are they using in their slogans? Is it coming from original life force? Is it coming from original light, spark? Or is it just copying something? Is it destroying the planet? Or is it of service and actually adding to the joy and life that it is to be human? These are some questions that you have to ask yourself when you're in any kind of corporate or any situation. Now, the way to help from within, like, I see it like you've got all of these beautiful beings, like beautiful humans scattered throughout all of these places. And as they turn on, it cracks the mold from the inside. It cracks the structure. The more that people are willing to stand up for their own integrity within the structure and to speak within the structure, because majority of the people that I work with in those situations, they can't speak, they have no voice. Even if they're in situation, even if they're in positions of power and of, they can do something, they can shift something. Now, but that's the process that everyone has to go to, like, break back into themselves. And I know plenty of like coaches and whatnot that like strategize, like working with high-end people to help them find themselves and then affect change from up, then it trickles down. But every single human being in that structure is bringing it to life. Yes, you can bring in like, we're going to meditate and we're going to do this, but if it's done just because, like, it's not changing the culture of the workplace. It's not actually, it's helping people to cope with more shit
and tick a box.
And tick a box, but it's actually, it's not doing anything. And you know, and I work with people in like newer industries that are like in Web3 and whatnot, that have like experienced burnout, because they're like, that's a very different like structure as well. But the more people are connected to nature and natural law, the easier it is to feel comfortable to have a voice in those situations. It's like turning them on from the inside. Not having to have so much distraction. Like what we've learned over the last couple of years, for example, is that how many useless meetings that people were having to go to just to tick boxes and to do this and to that. There's other countries that implement like 4-day work weeks and all this kind of stuff, which they do see change within the structures. Like they do see change with morale and the mentality of workers. But it's still in a system that is a very strong class system. And until, you know, we all unite and blah, blah, it's not really going to change. But the thing that's going to change it is when people actually realize where they are and they realize what they're in, what they've signed up to. Because you can sign up to something because they've told you it's a certain way, but the truth of it is completely opposite, is the complete opposite. And if you have to talk yourself into going to work, if you have to talk yourself to going into these situations, then your light it doesn't deserve to be in that space.
Yeah, it's like going into battle every day, right?
Completely.
It's like,
and it's no joke. Like it's
true. Yeah, I mean, I laugh because
oh no, you've fucking been through it, and I know that.
Yeah, but it's true. Like it is literally like going into battle. Yeah.
But you cracked out of it. Like you put up with so much stuff and so much, without going into any detail, obviously, but like I have watched you, I've witnessed you literally be in the thick of it, and then listen to your body and listen to the symptoms that your body was producing for you to go, hey, can you see me? And literally throw your hat over the fence and go for it as well. And it takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of strength. And these are the things that are drilled out of people in the workforce. Even if it's like, no, you can speak up, but if you do, you're probably going to get fired.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's always the intention that's the motive behind everything. But at the end of the day, every single human being is a sovereign ball of light, is a sovereign being. And we choose where we want to put our focus. And whatever we put our focus to, we're feeding and we're making exist. As soon as you stop paying attention to it, it loses power. And, you know, we're being manipulated over and over and over and over and over again now with like, we need to pay attention to all this heartache and all this bad stuff that's happening all the time. And this person did this wrong and they're telling you exactly what they're doing. And we get angry, and that anger is fueling it. It doesn't matter what emotion, our energy in motion, our emotions fuel whatever we are looking at. We bring it into existence. And it's the remembrance of actually how much power each individual has. And working from a place of non-trauma to help you produce your life's work here. But like, I've seen you go through everything, and you know, and I've seen you like when you go in and you can't deal with anything because your body's just trying to fucking heal. And we have this crazy thing now, right, where if someone wants to spend time at home by themselves, that's like not right. That means they might be depressed if people don't want to pick up the phone or whatever. Like, it's such a programming of like, yes, you should definitely be checking on people, but have respect for them if they don't want to talk to you. It doesn't mean that they're depressed and going through something and they have to go talk to a psychologist. Like, the boundaries of the mind, it's like, no, let them fucking heal and unwind. If they want to scream into the pillow, scream into their pillow. Like, let their body do what it needs to do.
And you make such an incredible point there too, because we have forgotten to listen to our bodies. We've been conditioned to not listen to our bodies because it's served a purpose of workplaces to just keep pushing through. And even in these last couple of years, I think collectively people have had to look at their own bodies, because everyone's had to check in with themselves and be like, oh, am I unwell today? Or am I actually okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because previously, even if you had a bit of a cough or whatever, like, still people would just turn up because they're like, oh, it'll be fine, you know, let's just spread the germs to the rest of the office. But, you know, it's just a cold, like, it's all good.
Yeah.
But we've got to turn up because, you know, we've got work to do. It's that stoicism. But yeah, like, it is about listening to your body, and it is a really hard lesson to learn. And I appreciate your words there. Thank you so much for like witnessing my process and what I've gone through too, because that's, you know, you've been a huge part of that as well, like in helping me see those things. And the work that you do is so incredibly powerful, and it's not even part of what you're like, this is just a small minutia thing of the big things that you're here to do as well. And so, like, I'm also conscious of time because I feel like we've gone for a while, but I could talk to you forever.
I haven't even looked at it. I can keep talking. No, but like, it has been an honor being like one of your cheerleaders and like helping you break out. I can tell you honestly, not that many people break out with such force and power left in them once they're out. And like, there's a reason why I call you like the Justice Queen. Like, you've got so much fucking force in you, and that never went. In most people, that gets shut off really quickly, and then you're like, it's gonna be a long road to break them out. And the reality is, it's usually cancer, massive, like really strong autoimmune problems, someone else's death very close to them, or something very dramatic that has to that does shake them out of the position, because those are always big points where people are like, what am I doing? And then they start, and then they do it for this person, or they do it because of this, and then they have to fight the cancer, which is stupid, by the way. You should not come with force to your self-healing process. But you didn't lose your fight, which is pretty rare.
Well, maybe it's got something to do with the feisty redheadedness that, you know, you can't really tame sometimes. But yeah, so like in the years of massaging and in the years of doing this energetic body work and things like that, you know, what are some of the biggest experiences that you have, I guess, realized? Like, what are the learnings that you've taken away? Because obviously you open things up for people to learn a lot. So like, what are the observations and perspectives that have like shifted for you over the time? Like, even in these past few years, I've seen your perspective of things shift incredibly as well. So like, curious to see, you know, what's that process for you?
Well, personally, it's been my kids. I've got two beautiful boys. And so with every birth, that birth experience changes my entire existence. And it's like I lose memory of everything from before. But from a work perspective, the biggest change was when I was working in Leichhardt, and I was actually getting some extra training in massage and to do more like specialized work. And the biggest thing, I'd finished massage like my training, and like I knew everything, high distinctions, blah blah. Like I went for, like I knew my stuff. And then I was working with people that had a different method. But the biggest thing, I actually had a beautiful female mentor at that specific moment. And she taught me how to trust my intuition, which meant that I wasn't forcing the body anymore. I was allowing myself to hear the body. That was the biggest flip. You need the book work. You need have the map of how everything works, and whatever is current, which continually changes, information of how the body works. But then the intuition side of like being able to hear a muscle and be able to hear what that is connected to. And so I work differently. I talk through massage, which I know some people hate, but I have to say specific words, because a specific word can actually release a muscle without even touching it. I have seen the craziest shit on my table, and I love it because every single human I learn something new with every single human, and I just am beyond in awe of how the human body actually works. And I'm in there with the focus of learning, which means I'm open to hearing. And it's incredible. Every single human has a different pattern, different map, different ancestry. I see when I first started hearing stuff, yes, you could say it was psychic stuff that was kind of coming in, but I call it intuitive because it has less stigma. But I learned pretty early on that the human being on my table or sitting in front of me, they come with this big crew of support. And I come with a big crew of support. And it's those two crews actually having a conversation, which is like my energy field having a conversation with their energy field. And their energy field will use my memory and use keywords that I associate things with to open up or say the thing that needs to be said for them to open up. So like, it's going to sound really weird. So like I see it like a video in my head. It's like a projector turns on and I can see it in my mind. So like your mind isn't what everyone tells you your mind is. You don't have to merge your mind and your body. It's all bullshit. Your mind is literally like a television screen, and your whole body is picking up all of the receptors. It's picking up all of the information and relaying that into a picture that you're going to comprehend. But everyone has different programming. Everyone has different comprehensions of words. Two people can hear the same word and have completely different imagery and experiences. So it's like we're not pigeonholed. Like we work in a feminine field where literally it's like shining a beam of light into a diamond and every single color coming up. This is feminine. It's not like I'm working in shadows. It's completely everything. And so I was working with one of my friends, and she I was working with her, and then I could feel her like lineage coming in, but I didn't know what that was yet because I wasn't working with that yet. And it's going to sound really racist at this present time in my life, but I was like early 20s, and I was like, I can smell a cigar. Why can I smell a cigar? And she's like, oh, that must be my grandfather. He's one of my guy. Like I hear him sometimes. He had passed over. And then I saw a leprechaun run across my eyes, and I was like, is he Irish? She's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yes, I might have had a very limited understanding of anything Irish at that point in my life. But I say that story because they were using anything that I had to resemble anything that I could, like, I interpreted something. So like you're dealing with a completely different system of intricate interpretations. And when I work with every single human, it just adds to this like massive file of little perceptions that people can have and little things. And so the more that I can experience means that I have a bigger library and resources for them to work with me. And so, like, you know, I have this like when a lot of other people work with, like when they've just worked with like book learning, and then they apply that to massage, for example, they'll just focus on one muscle, and maybe the surrounding muscles, but like if I'm hitting like a shoulder, I'm looking and feeling the entire body because their leg will start flickering. And it's like, okay, well, there's association between possibly moving forward in a particular area and something to do with the way that their body is guarding and their armor is up. What's the association? What's here? And so then a follow-up question can come from that. And as soon as that happens, the leg will like do a bit of a shake, and then you see it just go, oh, okay, I'm free. And then the shoulder just goes, oh, okay, I can let go of my mom's perception of me when I was 2. Like, it's the body stores everything. And I have attempted so many times to write a book about like the map of the body. I can't do it because every single body is different and it picks up information differently. Premies, for example, literally have a different brain because they've missed out on a certain amount of development inside, and their brain literally rewires in a completely different way. And so when they were doing scans on premies, brain scans, they thought something was wrong. But it's like, no. And then you give it time, and then they saw that the literal pathways were different. And they still had the same function, but the body is the most adaptable, most glorious, incredible thing that we have. We literally have the privilege of living in. But we turn it off and take drugs and pharmaceuticals and like turn everything off. And so we can't hear our guidance and stay in our system.
Yeah, we like to band-aid because we don't want to feel anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's fun. Oh,
really fun.
I mean, yeah, I have to laugh because, yeah, in my years of doing massage therapy as well, like I totally resonate with so much of that.
Yeah, you know.
It's kind of funny. And yeah, like band-aid effects, you know, like I remember having clients come in who had, you know, like fallen off a horse and, you know, just wanted to come in for, like, they were seeing a physio and doing all this other stuff, but they just wanted to feel nurtured. And I think that that's what these environments, you know, why people are so drawn to, you know, the work that you do and things is for that nurture as well, because we don't have a lot of environments that are unconditionally nurturing as what you do in your work. So with that, how can people best support you and best support your work? Where can they find you? Like, you know, what is it that you're, how can people best support you, really?
Thank you for that question. I do have my website, sarahbaiada.com, but I'm just about to change that up a little bit. My focus is So I'm going to be running a few more courses over the next 6 to 9 months, in person and online. My Spring Clean is freaking awesome, but I only do that every September, so I'll probably do that in the September. I'm going to be running Illuminate, which is to help women step into more of their own sovereign work, especially speaking, practitioner, and to navigate those worlds of self-branding and all that kind of stuff. But the big body of work that's coming through that I've been working on for a very, very long time is called Rosa Mystica, and it is about unweaving colonization through the feminine story, which is very much to do with the church's interpretation of, like, you know, Magdalene as a prostitute, and it's like, well, no, like the women around that period were just straight out badass wild women who would go and collect wild lavender and support entire villages. And kind of I want to tackle more of the religious and new age influence on women and how they practice, and to let go of more of those layers of what we've been conditioned feminine is, female is, and through that hopefully more actual empowerment, whereas you feel comfortable to be yourself, not to tackle another project on doing it, like, you know, like actually just feel comfortable being yourself. The biggest problem I see in the world is people detached from their human experience, which means that they're not actually experiencing what they're here to experience, and it stops a lot of the problems down the line. All the mental stuff, yes, but like self-fulfillment is a big one. But yeah, so that's going to be coming up very soon, and yeah, and then past that I'm not sure what's going to happen.
I mean, that sounds like a pretty big body of work right there. So I'm so excited to see, I'm so excited to see that come into the world. And yeah, I will put all your links and all of that sort of stuff in the show notes. And once again, thank you so much, Sarah. It has been an honor and a privilege, and it's been such a great chat. Like, I've absolutely loved having you on. So thank you so much for this.
Thank you. And I love your podcast, and I love everything that you're doing. And I just, I'm actually in awe of how you just literally pushed through so much shit and just let yourself do what you're here to do. You're so good at this stuff. And yeah, I can't wait to see your next steps as well.
Thank you so much. And for all the listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.